All right, so we have another person join. Let's see, awesome. So we got one more. Perfect. So let's go ahead and make sure I have them. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who am I missing? So can't I have art? Okay, Mike sent in twice. That's why. All right, very good. All right, so I am recording it. One other thing, if you guys have a question, I am looking at the participants here, for example. This is what I see of who signed in. Somewhere on your screen, you're going to see where you have some options for emojis, thumbs up, etc. You can raise your hand. Okay, as you can see, I will see whose hand is raised. I'll pause and ask the question or answer your question at that point. And then when I'm done, I will lower your hand, just like I did here for myself. All right. Just like any training class that we provide, whether it's in person or live, the instructor has to read the disclaimer. So here goes. The information contained in these videos is intended for use by a qualified, well-built Garland authorized service technician. It is not intended to replace the information found in the well-built Garland installation or service manuals provided with the equipment. We are still working on the service manual. We have a rough draft of it. So if you're requesting it, you will get a rough draft. So we are still adding things to the service manual. If you are an end user in need of assistance, you should contact Well-Built Garland to find a Well-Built Garland authorized service technician in your area. Well-Built Garland requires that all Well-Built Garland equipment be serviced by a Well-Built Garland authorized, trained service provider. Well-Built Garland does not warrant or guarantee the services of third parties. All right, I'll get that out of the way. All right, so we're going to talk about the active compression and staging lane grills. As you see here on the picture, you have the AC grill or active compression clamshell grill on the left. All right, I'll put my laser pointer on so you can see this is the clamshell grill. You'll see a better picture of it next. Over here is your staging lane grill. Wendy's uses this for cooking their eggs and holding their protein, whether it's well, I should say your sausage patty or uh, your fresh beef or your beef patties, I should say. Not. All right, so we'll talk about this as we go through how we set this up, etc. But I want to point your attention to the active compression grill. You have a chicken lane and you have 2 burger lanes. You as a technician, when you're doing a startup or install or both, you have to make sure the UI is set up accordingly based off of the positioning of the grills. If the sandwich making station, let me go ahead and move it to the next slide. I can show you this. If the sandwich station is over here, as you see in this picture, that means right next to that will be your staging lane grill. And then off the staging lane grill will be the clamshell grill. Now, if your prep station, your sandwich making station is on the left side of this picture, it would mean your staging lane grill and then your clamshell grill. And that all is very important on positioning of the grills. Once the grills are positioned where they need to be, you're going to have to go into the UI and make sure the menus are correct for the appropriate position of the grills. For an example, in that position, the only menu a customer should see when they go into press and go is the faster chicken. And the other 2 lanes, because they're next to the holding grill or the staging lane grill, should be your PM menu, faster PM. So you're gonna have 2 ounce and 4 ounce. That's all they're able to select. Okay. Wendy's corporate will not mix chicken into another lane that they cook beef patties on, and vice versa. All right. So we'll talk about that when we get into warranty very shortly. So that is very important. We'll talk about how to set that up when you go into you're setting everything up into the startup positioning. All right. So that is huge. all depends on where this chicken lane is. It's always the furthest lane away from the staging lane grill, depending on positioning. All right, images and components may change just like anything that's out there. Again, this is we are currently out of our test phase. We have approximately 9 to 10 grills already installed for production stage, so things will change. You're going to see some of those changes in this presentation. Excuse me. Like with any training I do, safety is my pet peeve. Okay, when you're out there, make sure you adhere to all the safety and warnings, etc. on the grill and the manuals and the training, whatever the case may be. Even the electrical diagrams anymore, I'll have warnings on them too as well. Or if it's an electrical diagram book, you'll have several pages of warnings, just like what you see here. This would be your operation manual. There are several pages of cautions and warnings, etc., alerting you that something could go wrong if you don't adhere to them. Okay, we know that, we're technicians. Okay, one of the things that you have to turn around and do is always disconnect unit before servicing. Okay, remove power supply. As you can see here, there are many plugs on the back of a grill, the active compression grill. There are at least 2 plugs, possibly 3 if they're using a hood interlock system. You got to remove power for all 3 of them, disconnect it all. And the reason I say that is before you open up a side panel or a front panel, you don't want to accidentally drop that panel inside the unit and arc it like I did a few months ago when I was out at a location. Okay, somebody bumped me, I dropped the panel, went down on top of a contactor, and it arced out. Luckily, nobody was hurt. Yeah, I had to replace a couple components, but that's unfortunate. It shouldn't have happened if I would have unplugged it first. But again, technician by trade, spent 15 years in the field, 16 at Garland. So yeah, it's old habits. It's hard to break. So make sure you unplug the unit before opening it. Learn from my mistake, not from your own. Take a look at your connections, your plug-ins. You have 2 different kinds. You have the Menikeys or the pin and sleeve. This is for the installations that are going to be like an island type install or the middle of the floor where the electrical power comes down from the ceiling, not inside of a wall. And then the NEMA configurations are units that are installed against the wall like you saw in the picture before. Wendy's, Garland, the KES with kitchen equipment supplier will all do our best, including the rep group that's helping Wendy's with the rollouts. We'll do the best to make sure they get the right equipment for the right store. Okay, so with that said, it might not be a bad idea to have a set of these on hand. You don't necessarily need the whole cord, just the plug-ins. All right, this way it doesn't take up as much room. This way, if we accidentally or somebody accidentally ships the wrong grills to the wrong location, you're not holding up an install. All right, leveling the grill. Okay, any next generation platform grill, except the one platinum unit, has the solid state relay boards, heat sinks protruding out the bottom of the grill. That's to help keep that heat sink nice and cool. Or I'm sorry, the solid state relay board nice and cool through the heat sink. When you're lifting it up to repair a caster, adjust a caster, or whatever, and using a floor jack or forklift truck, make sure you're aware of those solid state relay boards, heat sinks. There's only 4 screws that are self-tappers that screw this to the bottom of the grill. They will not hold the weight of the grill. The fins will bend, and or the solid state relay board will come crashing up inside the unit, okay, causing a lot of damage. With that being said, okay, right now you can see the 2 technicians here. They're adjusting my caster height. It's on the frame. Perfect. If the grill should slip and all of a sudden now the jack hit the solid state relay board and it was plugged in, you could cause some arcing and could cause more failures besides just the one component. So always disconnect power before you're adjusting or fixing, repairing casters. Right, very important. You don't want that to slip and hit the solid state relay board. Also on the back here, you can see some picture of the back of the grill. Any next generation grill, at this matter, it's going to be any clamshell grill that's out there. You're going to have yellow safety stickers, one on the rear and one on each side. At any time you're servicing it and they are not legible, okay, it is highly, highly recommended that you replace those warning stickers. Okay, during your annual PM or annual certification, depending on the customer, they are part of the certification or PM, especially if you cannot read them. Behind this panel and this panel is a circuit breaker. This one here will be on for the left and the middle lane, and this is just for the right lane. And you can also see that by the size of the power cords, one smaller than the other. So keep that in mind. All right, adjusting casters. This is on the test. 36 inches from the cooking surface to the floor is what Wendy's is requiring. All right, now that part for the test is taken care of. Now I'm going to give you the reality of it. The reality of this is you have a red mark on this caster stem. That has always been in place. That's always been there for all the 9501s, World Grills, all the Express Grills, etc. That red mark's always been there. We've always told you never to see that red mark. In order to get close to the 36 inches, okay, sometimes you might get lucky and get almost to 36. Usually it's anywhere between 35 to 35 and a half. That red mark comes down below the caster jam nut. Okay. And let me go ahead and, whoops. Again, there's the, okay, 36 inches off the floor. You can see the forklift lifting up the grill. I'm questioning just the picture. I didn't take the picture. I'm questioning the picture of the fork truck, the forks of the fork truck being on top of that solid state relay board. Because again, it's probably coming out here somewhere, which is about this where the solid state relay board is, the heat sink. So I'm questioning that, just out of curiosity. But here, this is what happens when you adjust that to 36 inches. That red mark that you see here is down further away from your caster jam nut. But if you put that red mark just below the caster jam nuts like you see here, and you tighten everything in, you're using about half of the threads inside the grill. That nut there is actually welded in place. One of the things that if you're doing the install and the startup, we deliver the grill to you. And then it's your job to prep the grill and deliver it to the store, install it, and do the startup. Excuse me. One thing I'm going to say to do is when you're delivering the grill, do not adjust the 36-inch height. Okay. The reason for that is if this comes off the trailer or the lift gate or hits the curb when you're pushing it across the sidewalk or even the threshold of the doorway, this could break the weld of the nut, being that it's extended this far down. Okay, when you get it inside the store, then adjust this. Okay, like you saw the picture of the technician doing. Okay, and here's another way of looking at it. Okay, so that's going to end up about 35 to 35 and a half inches off the floor. Make sure it's on the test, you mark 36 inches. Also during install, when you're uncrating it, there's 2x4s that go on the side of the unit that helps to hold the unit in place during shipping. Those bolts that are used to hold that 2x4 in place, do not reuse them. Reason for that, they'll extend into the unit when you put your grease drawer shelves on, and they'll come in and they'll go past the guide here for your lift mechanism, and you can actually turn around and break your cross member, your aligning member here. Okay, you can actually break it like you see here. There's a broken here, and at that point it caused a lot of damage. We had to replace a lot of components on this particular grill. Now, we started out with just the cross member. Well, that didn't quite work, and it still is binding. We ended up replacing a lot of components because of this one simple bolt. Okay, make sure you don't reuse those bolts. On the back of the grill, if you're doing a wall installation, if the wall is behind the grills, there are standoffs. Okay, those standoffs on the active compression clamshell grill they look similar to what's in this drawing, and you're going to reuse the screws on the upper panel. Take those 4 screws out, place these in place, and you use those screws. That gives the proper distance from the wall, so the front of each unit is even with the sandwich making station. And here's your staging lane grill, and this is your kits. They do come with hardware for the simple reason we're not reusing anything. So I'm going to go enlarge it over here. Make sure when you're installing these standoffs, you're only using the 2 screws. All 4 bolts or holes that are in the back of the unit do not line up. You're only using 2. As you can see here, top left, bottom right, and then top right, bottom left. Okay, keep that in mind. You're not using 4. Also, when you're prepping the grill or doing the startup, if you didn't do the install, make sure you remove the desi packs. Those desi packs are there to help to keep the humidity down while it's in transit or in storage. Once it's in the store, you have to remove that. So if you're going to be doing the install and you're prepping the grill, you're going to do that, take that out before you deliver the grill. Rule of thumb, a 1 platinum grill will have 1, 2 platinum grill will have 2, 3 platinum grill will have 3. However, if we run short of them, you're going to see 1 on a 2 platinum and 2 in the 3 platinum grill. So keep that in mind. You always have a minimum of 2 and 1. Another safety concern. Again, I'm a technician by trade, guys. Uh, I've never wore PPEs when I was out there working on a piece of equipment. Never wore gloves to protect my hands. I know when I'm doing my calibrations or working on a piece of equipment, it is hot. I will get burned if I touch it. So keep that in mind. Uh, for training purposes, I have to mention it. Always wear your PPEs, personal protective equipment, like gloves or heat-resistant gloves, etc. Again, during calibrations, you are close to the heating sources. Data tag info. Hey guys, we've had a couple calls on technicians that kind of refuse to do the install because of the data tag missing the CSA or the UL labeling. Okay, because it's punched out here. These grills are still technically in a test function, so we haven't gotten the official stamp. However, this blue sticker right here is actually more intensive testing agency than the UL or CSA. So this blue sticker supersedes the CSA and UL labeling. So as long as that's on there, you're good to install here in North America. Just to keep that in mind. Now, outside of North America, I'm not 100% sure how that's going to work. But inside of North America, we're good to go. Also, if you're a company that likes to put your sticker on the front of the piece of equipment with an ID number, I know some of you do that. We ask you to put that sticker on the side panel somewhere on right here. Okay. This way, the number on the front of the grill is there for the customer use. Their dispatching of service calls are done through 2 ways. 1, Garland, and 2, the Corrigal system, which is used by the corporate stores. Okay. If you guys run a call and it hasn't been dispatched, okay, you might get a question on, well, why were you there? How come you worked on it? All this other stuff. So again, service calls come through a dispatching system. If you happen to be on site and you happen to do that, just turn around and say, okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. I will definitely take a look at it. But please go ahead and place the service call so I can get a dispatch so we can turn around and put that with the completed paperwork and the electronic sign off on the service call. And you'll see that in a minute. This way, there's no question, and we don't have to worry about if you're there or not. These gold or copper or brass inserts here are used for the smaller 4-lane grill. There's extra standoffs here to help stabilize it. Okay, so that's what those are there for. And if you happen to have the 4-lane grill, you'll see that in an accessory box for those standoffs. All right, let's talk about, excuse me, let's talk about the warranty. Warranty for all units basically is very similar for US and Canada. Outside of the US and Canada area, the warranty may change a little bit based on country or region. Your standard warranty is 1 year parts and labor. And under your standard warranty, overtime's not covered. We'll talk about the overtime portion of it when we get into the Wendy side of the warranty. Under standard warranty, again, travel costs up to 100 miles or 2 hours will be covered. Again, even before I came to Garland 16 years ago when I was doing warranty work, this "or" was always there. When your point of contact or your warranty people enter into warranty claim, okay, it goes through a system and that system checks the warranty claim. If the criteria meets, it will go on to the next check. For an example, travel. So when you put a travel in there and it's over 100 miles, even if it's 101 mile, it's going to turn around and flag it. And at that point, the system will send it off to a warranty specialist where they will review it. Again, that system is "or," which is not checking for the "or." So if you're under 100 miles and under 2 hours, that check will be checked off as green and it will go on to the next check. You see what the next cost is. Okay. Travel that is never covered, boat, plane, train, bus, even helicopter. I had somebody ask about that because it wasn't written on the form. Overtime portions and other special circumstances are not covered, unless, of course, prearranged. 1 second here. Just gotta, all right, that's the team. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing somebody. Okay. Exclusions from coverage. Okay. Any warranty. Okay. On Garland, glass is never covered under warranty. This includes the glass on the UI, the user interface, or the main control, or the touchscreen, however you want to word it. If you as a technician went out and replaced that UI, and because it was found faulty, and there was no cracks in the glass, and you put the new one in, you do all your reset everything and do all your calibrations again, you go out and you're leaving and you're running late, and you take that UI and you just throw it in the back of your truck. Lands on the corner of a tool or another part, and the glass now breaks. Well, you just turned around and caused that warranty claim to be a non-warranty claim. Again, that UI needs to come back to us intact without any breakage. All right. So once you hand that back to your parts person or wherever you have to put it for return parts, okay, and it's not broken, at that point you can wash your hands of it. It's no longer your responsibility. Okay, it's the next person's. It's also the person of the agency, whoever's shipping it back to Garland to make sure that it does not get broken. The reason for that is we have to submit or send those warranty claims, those units over to the provider or the vendor of that particular UI. They won't even check into it if the glass is broke. They won't even hook it up. So keep that in mind. Okay. Normal maintenance items, seals, gaskets, O-rings, Teflon sheets. They are never covered under warranty. Not even under special circumstances will we cover them. Consequential damages. Okay, it says see document for more info. That's basically floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, or whatever. Okay, or a customer turning around, power washing the unit. Those are consequential damages. They're not covered. All right. Any charges addition to SRT. What is SRT? That's your standard repair time. And give me 2 seconds. I do have, I'll bring it up. It just was released just a day or so ago. And I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to show you. Actually, it was released Tuesday. Okay, let me bring this up. Open. There we go. I'll bring it over. And this is the standard repair time for clamshell grills. So a solid state relay board, for an example. You have a 45 minutes to diagnose the problem. Well, I'm going to get you into it where you can diagnose the problem within 15, 20 minutes or less. And then the target repair time, once you figure out that it needs to be replaced, is 1 hour. So you got max time is a 1 hour, 45 minutes. Anything over that, the warranty system that your point of contact is entering in, or your warranty person is entering in, if it's over, it's going to be flagged, and then the system will send it off to a warranty specialist for review. Actuator, for an example, you have 45 minutes to diagnose. Again, you shouldn't need 45 minutes, but it's there, and then an hour and a half to replace it. So 2.25 hours, that's to replace it and to redo your calibrations. Again, these times are there because of once you are at the grill, given access to the grill, that's how long it should take. Any more than that, it's going to be flagged. Okay, right down to gap calibrations, for an example. Okay, gap calibrations is 3/4 of an hour and 3/4 of an hour to actually do it for an hour and a half. Now, you replace the actuator motor. Okay, it's not going to take you a full hour and a half to do it. It's going to take you about 45 minutes to replace one actuator. And then the other 45 minutes is used for gap calibration. Just to keep that in mind. Let's see, shaft seal replacements. Again, shaft seal replacement is not covered under warranty, but there is a repair time for it. So again, these are based off of once you get access to the unit. Now there's counterline, deck ovens, ranges, induction. There's all kinds of standard repair times. Okay, just giving you an idea what the system is looking for. So anything over the max hours, the system will flag it and it'll go to a warranty specialist for review. We're going to turn around and start putting the charges of waiting for the customer to give you the access to the grill back to the customer. Okay, so if you arrive on site and you have to wait an hour, that's not charged to warranty. Okay, that's charged to the customer. Okay, we're starting to do that. So keep that in mind. If you're below the standard repair time, you're okay. Above it, yeah, it's another story. Keep in mind too, if you're calling tech support, okay, and you're sitting there waiting 45 minutes, we're looking at that time too as well. What we're going to do with that, because again, if you're calling for tech support, chances are you haven't been in training. Okay, so keep that in mind. So we're looking at that. We're looking at the person that called in, the person that did the service work. Were they trained? Was there a gap in training? Was there a gap in receiving the information? That type of stuff. We're looking at that. So keep that in mind. All right. The biggest thing is going to be the after hours person that's on call, because chances are getting a person that's been trained, unless we have every person in that organization or that branch trained, is going to be pretty hard to do, because it does take time to do the training. Improper or unauthorized repairs. So the improper is using a non-OEM part in a repair. Unauthorized repairs, okay, using I'm going to use the word trunk slammer or a non-factory authorized service agency. They're also Wendy's is also questioning that as the factory authorized service agent, or FAS. Well, how do we know we get a trained technician out there? Well, that's one of the reasons why we do a lot of this training. We do 2 trainings a week. We have been since September. Okay, In the first 2 weeks of September, we did a one a day. So now we're down to 2 a week. So let's talk about the warranty for Wendy's for the AC grill and the staging lane grill. Both units will receive 12 months parts and labor from the date of installation. Okay. So that's one of the things we got to look at. So the date of install might not be the same as the startup. Okay. So we're looking at that, how that's going to be, because up until beginning of the week, the install and the startup happened at the same time or the same day. So now we're finding out that the Wendy's locations would like to see the equipment in the store and then a week later do the startup. Okay, so we're looking at it 2 different ways of why they want to do that. Well, because they want to. And we're looking at, well, how do we start the warranty and how do we cover the extra trip charge, okay, for delivering the grills. Now, again, installing the grills, the hardest part is going to be getting them off your trailer or you're off your truck, putting them in place, and that's it. That's all you're doing is basically putting them in place. That's the installation. You're wheeling them into place. And also you're going to adjust the height at that point. But that's your installation. There's not much more to it. And then you're going to do your startup, which is where you get into checking the voltages and turning the unit on and checking everything out and recalibrating as needed. So that's the differences. So your installation is going to be just that. Out of hours cover is included on warranty calls that are reactive for a call that comes in for that it has been classed as a machine down. Okay. A classification of machine down is, let's say that active compression clamshell grill can no longer cook chicken because the left lane's not working. And that's the lane that's chicken is set up on. You cannot tell them how to move that chicken lane to another lane. Okay. Even though I can do it. You can do it as a technician if you know the programming. And after this training, you will know that. But we still can't tell the customer how to do it. So at that point, that machine is down. You have to make a 4-hour response time. So we'll get into the service calls here on what really that looks like. Okay, warranty for any other time that like a caster or something that doesn't affect the unit being down. Overtime portion is not covered. That would be charged back to the store. There is extended warranty for both units as long as they purchase it and they do an annual PM. Excuse me. They can purchase up to an additional 4 more years and to give them a 5-year warranty from date of installation. Again, each year, in order to qualify to keep that warranty, they have to do that annual PM. It's just like a certification of the grill. Oh my God. Sorry about that, guys. Misuse of equipment, again, that's standard. Adjustments and calibrations are only covered for the first 30 days of after install. After that, they're no longer covered. Okay. So if a technician goes out on the 40th day of install and they have to do a platen calibration, it's not covered. That same technician did that calibration on the 40th day, left, and now on the 60th or 70th day after he left, that calibration is not covered by Garland. Now, some agencies out there will cover their technicians' work for 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. So that's where that would come into play. Excuse me a moment. Okay. All right, sorry about that. They're working down the hall from me, and the dust is just flying like crazy. So I apologize. All right. So again, adjustments, again, depending on your agency, depending on if you're going to charge the customer or not after the first 30 days. All right. Mandatory critical parts stocking list. This should have been sent to your point of contact, whether it be your parts manager, your service manager, whatever. But they are for your go boxes or crash boxes, depending on what you call them. And if just for an example, if I were to look at two part numbers on this list, the SSRB and the actuator assembly, they are the same part numbers used on all next generation grill platforms. We all know at this point here that there's part shortages for any manufacturer that's out there, basically due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On the Wendy's parts, if you should need one, okay, that is critical and they are top priority parts. So if you have to order one and we don't have it in, say, Parts Town, you can do an emergency order through Parts Town to drop ship from Kitchen Care or from Garland, however it may be, and say emergency Wendy's unit down. That takes top priority over the other clamshell products. The reason being is we are, again, still looking at being the primary supplier for these particular equipment. So we want to show and put our best foot forward when we're working on the Wendy's units. Just to give you a heads up, there's about 8,500 stores worldwide. And right now, Wendy's is saying we are going to receive 50% minimum. We could receive up to 75% or more, depending how we perform and how well our FAS network works out. So again, we're all into this together. And again, we need to make sure that we're all paying attention to what's going on. Another reason for all this training. All right, some installation and startup information. So the first couple of lines here, it doesn't really pertain to you, but it pertains to the point of contact at your organization. So that point of contact, or POC, is going to receive the job from Rise. That's our installation, upgrades, retros department. They schedule, they coordinate it with all the FASs. Again, FAS, Factory Authorized Service Agent. That person needs to accept the job or decline it within 24 hours. That person also needs, the POC also needs to contact the site to schedule the delivery, if you're installing it, the install, and the startup. Or if you're just doing the startup, this is going to be crucial because your delivery and install will probably happen at the same time by a different person that's installing the grill. So if it's an overnight startup, that means somebody's installing that grill before you get there. Or if it's an overnight install and delivery and startup, that means somebody's there removing the existing equipment while the store is closed overnight, and you're going to put in the new equipment. Again, very important that we arrive on site at the time we're supposed to. All right, and then that POC has to turn around, schedule the date, and notify Rise, etc. The POC is also going to confirm that there's power and product available to perform the startup. The reason we need product, at the end of your startup, you have to do product integrity tests. Okay, make sure the grill can cook the product the way it's supposed to. If you're going to do the installation, whoever's going to at your location will receive the package of grills, the two grills. Right from the truck, make sure that you don't see any damages on the crating or the boxes that they're in, for example. If you do, make sure that person marks the trucking bill of lading. Okay, we pay insurance to the trucking companies to get the equipment to you. Okay, there is a certain time frame that we need to turn around and submit a claim against the trucking company. And again, I'm not sure that whole process. I'm pretty sure it's sending a claim through the trucking company website, etc. But each trucking company has a different process. As long as it's marked on the paperwork, box is damaged, at that point, when you open it up, if there's concealed damage that you can't see, then you can go ahead and make the claim. Again, if the grills are received, there's no damage to the crating, what you're going to do, and again, you have a 10-day window to make a claim, is you're going to open the crating as soon as possible. You're going to do a visual inspection of the equipment. Make sure there's no damage. Couple of reasons you're doing that. Number one, if it's a component that needs to be replaced, we want to get it to you before the install and delivery date. Or if it's a complete grill, depending on the damage that needs to be replaced, we want to get it to you as soon as possible. So don't accept the equipment and not do anything with it until the day before when you're loading it on the trailer to prep it. Okay, you'll want to do that visual inspection almost immediately. Another thing that we have to do is prepare the equipment. Wendy's corporate wants us to turn around and do this off-site before it gets to the grill. Again, this is whether we're installing it as a FAS or the kitchen equipment supplier is doing it or the warehouse zinc marketing is doing it. All this should be done off-site. The grill plate height should be 36 inches from the floor. This is the one thing I'm going to disagree with. Do this on site. Again, I know if that grill is at 35.5 inches from the floor, 36 inches from the floor, you are taking a chance of breaking the caster right off or bending the weld nut, or even worse, bending the frame of the unit when it hits a curb or comes off the trailer or the lift gate. So again, that's the one thing I'm going to turn around and say do on site. Everything else you can do on your location. Remove it from the crating, remove all the protective film, or the plastic wrap, etc. Attach any part that is attached via a screw. Okay. Then deliver it. This way, it gets to site where it needs to be. One thing that's not on here, again, this is the presentation that was supplied by us to Wendy's to let them know what's going on. Excuse me. One thing that's not on here is the tie straps or the zip ties. All right. One thing you want to make sure if you're doing before you plug in that AC grill is cut the zip ties for the conduits. They are zip tied to the guide loop in the back of the unit. Once you plug it in and you turn on that single main power switch, okay, the first thing that UI is going to do for each lane is going to go through initialization. It's going to want to see those platins in the open, ready state. So if they're down, guess what's going to happen? It's going to send power out to the motor, actuator motor, and it's going to send them up. If those zip ties are still on the conduit, you can actually break the conduit or break some wires inside the conduit. So keep that in mind, cut those off. Now the zip ties that are holding the platins down, you might want to leave them there. If they're, and I've seen them both ways, zip tied, and I've also seen a metal banding to the crate. If it's a metal banding for the platins, just use a strap. Hold the platins in place the best as possible when you're delivering, so they're not bouncing all over the place. All right. Once you're done with the install, you're going to do your startup, and you're going to do the electronic startup checklist. There will be a QR code and a link in the RISE dispatch onto accessing this electronic startup. Just like what you did to register here for this class, it's a very similar process. Okay, it's just a link to go to a survey of questions. It's actually under the SurveyMonkey app, so you can turn around and do your electronic startup. Once you hit submit, you're going to get an event number. That event number has to go on your paperwork for warranty claim. okay, for the startup. If that event number is not on there, that means you did not do the electronic startup checklist, or you just didn't write it down. Okay, same thing goes for your installs for your service calls. Okay, again, like I said before, two different ways you're going to get a service call through the Corrigo system. If the corporate store is using the Corrigo system, it goes from Wendy's themselves, and you'll get that information. When during the RISE questioning, when they send it out for the install, startup / whatever, they are asking, do you use the Corrigo system, the point of contact at your location? If they say yes, they're going to make sure that somebody at your location has access to that Corrigo system. So this way, when your job is actually done, the next day when that person gets the paperwork, they can close out the job on the Corrigo system. Or you're going to get it through the Garland via an email. Okay, just like what you do for Chick-fil-A, you get those dispatches. Whether you get a dispatch from, whether that point of contact gets a dispatch from the Corrigo or from the Garland system, you have 30 minutes to accept the process. Okay, to accept that claim. Okay. Once you accept it, then you turn around and you have 1 hour from the time of the email was sent to contact the store. This is where the overtime portion comes into play. If by chance you cannot get in contact with anybody at the store, you got to run the call. All right, so if it comes in at, let's say, 4 o'clock, an hour later, you guys are off work for 5 o'clock, and that becomes overtime. Your point of contact or your service dispatch has tried several times to contact the store. That has to be documented too when you're doing your warranty claim. After that 1 hour, they will dispatch somebody to go out to the store to see what's going on. Again, this is for the reactive or the machine down service calls. Okay. If it's a caster or if it's something that doesn't affect cooking, it does not necessarily have to be run after hours. And if it has to be run after hours, at that point, you got to get the approval from the store because we don't cover those type of warranty after hours overtime. Okay, so keep that in mind. Only the machines classified as machine down. After you're complete with your service call, you have to do an online service request form. Again, you will have access to this. It's a QR code that you can scan and get onto it, or a link in the email. And you have to turn around and put in your information for the service request form. Once you submit it, it will be submitted and you'll get an event number that you have to add to your paperwork. Again, without those event numbers, it will not be considered a warranty claim and it will not go through the warranty system. And of course, if that service call came from the Corrigo, the point of contact the next morning will actually have to turn around and enter and close out that into the Corrigo system. You as a technician will not have access to that. Okay, user interface. Okay, so basically they're on YouTube, and I'm going to put these in the chat window. So if you look over here, I guess, like, bring this over. If I go to the chat, I'm going to put this QR code and this link in the chat. They will give you access to the videos on the Garland Grill's YouTube channel. Okay, the ones that are pertaining to Wendy's are protected, and Wendy's wanted them protected so no one else can get access to them. So they can't get passwords or anything else like that. So we have a separate channel on that playlist, I should say, not channel. On the Garland Girls channel on YouTube, we have a playlist specific for Wendy's. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to pull this up and add that to it. Just give me 2 seconds to pull it up. So I'm going to copy that, paste it, and then I'm going to copy the QR code, and I'm also going to paste that in. Again, that's in your chat now, so you can gain access through the chat, or use your smartphone, put it in camera, and you have access to your QR code for the videos. Once your device goes onto the system, it should remember you moving forward, especially if you have a Google account. If you don't have a Google account, you may have to use this way of getting into those separated videos every time. So again, some of these videos I'm going to show in the entirety, but however, most of them I will narrate. Again, we don't need to see everything on this training. The videos are there for you to go from one spot to another. Each video is designed to get you through a complete process without watching a video before or after. Let's go ahead and look at the first video. And again, I'm going to narrate it so we don't have to worry about it. So in the beginning of, I'm going to go ahead and mute it. So in the beginning of each video, you're going to have the title, you're going to have the introduction, which is going to be here with that same disclaimer. So I'm going to bypass that. I just wanted to show you that's on every video. So what we did here, we turned on the main power switch and we're waiting for it to go through its process. So what it's doing is going into the control contactor, going through that, energizing, sending power out through my safety thermostats for each heating zone per lane, back to the coil of the load contactor, sending three-phase power to a solid-state relay, checking thermocouples, checking communications between the boards, and it's checking to make sure the platen is in the up position. Once it's in the up position, everything checks out, everything's where it's supposed to be. It's going to go to the home screen just like this. Okay, this is indeed the off screen. Go ahead and play this for a second. So in the off screen, or anytime that you see this thermometer up here, you can simply click on it or push it, touch it, whatever you want to call it. And it should take you to your, oh, there you go, your temperature status screen. In the off screen, you're not going to have any set temperatures, okay, because it's off, so it's not looking at it. But it will give you your current temperature readings from your thermocouples. Okay, again, your thermocouples are grounded K-type. They measure millivolt. They send millivolts to the SIB, and the SIB then converts it over to Fahrenheit or Celsius, depending on where you're at. Okay, again, there are 5 heating zones per lane. There is one user interface or UI per lane. Okay, that UI operates each of its lane that it's located in. One thing that I'm going to turn around and say, when you're in temperature status, okay, and you want to exit it out, okay, don't use your green check mark or your diagnostic button here. If you use your green check mark, it's going to take you back to the home screen. If you use the diagnostic button, it's going to take you into the diagnostic tab of the programming. If you use the back arrow, it takes you back to wherever you were before you push that thermometer button. So again, for an example, if you're waiting for calibration to hit set point temperatures and you want to see where you're at, you came to here, you'll see their set temperatures and you'll see the temperature rising over here as it's heating. If you press any of these 2 buttons, it's going to actually take you out of your calibration settings. And at that point, you have to go back in, enter your password, go all the way, scroll down to whatever you were in, thermocouple calibrations, for example, and go through that process again. Always push the back arrow. It just takes you back to the previous screen that you're on. Just to kind of give you a heads up there. Don't have to do it that way, but it's up to you. Okay, hit the back arrow, and at that point, you're good. All right, now, here we go. So now we're in here. Let's talk about your settings, your tabs or your buttons on here. So you have your lock screen that locks the screen to wipe it down. You have your world key that turns around and takes the UI, changes the languages that you see. Okay. The only languages that are available are what's programmed in the UI. We're not adding any more languages. And there's several languages in there. And this is your clean icon for the customer to use it to put it into clean mode. Basically, clean mode is to stabilize the grill to the predetermined cleaning temperature, usually the temperature of the product that they're using to clean the grill. And once it reaches temperature, it's going to say at temperature, or it's ready to clean. At the acknowledge it, start cleaning the grill. When you're done cleaning it, acknowledge cleaning complete. Then at that point, the UI stores that as a complete cleaning. Doesn't mean every time, every day, the customer is going to use that clean icon. Okay, they might just wipe it down at the end of the day because why? They can do it quicker. They don't have to wait for the grill to stabilize. Okay, they're saving 20 minutes maybe at that point. So they're going to clean it anyhow, the best the store cleans. I'm going to put it that way. And at that point, if they do that without using the cleaning button, it does not record it as being cleaned. So keep that in mind when we go into looking at some of your statistics. The press and go is where the customer is going to press and go to go in to the next screen where they're going to select the menu for that lane with the recipes under the menu. Okay, very important. When we're in this grill, we're doing the startup, we know what lane we're working on. Again, the lane that's farthest away from the staging lane grill will always be chicken. So if my staging lane grill is over here on the right side of the screen, that means my left lane will be my chicken. Faster PM chicken left is what when you go in to check it. Okay, this way when the customer presses the press and go, all they see is the one menu to select from. Again, the middle will always be a patty if you're using a 3-platen grill. If it's a 2-platen grill, again, I've seen that in some smaller stores, not as busy. They'll have a 2-platen grill where the left lane or the right lane, depending on positioning of your staging lane grill, will be chicken or patty. All right. Menus is a place where it stores all the menus. So a menu is a collection of recipes that use the same cook time and the same, not the same cook time, the same cook temperatures for the platen and the grill surface. For example, that menu that you're set up, and we'll create one when we get to that point, the menu that you set up should have the same platen temperature and the same cooking temperature of all the recipes. This way, the grill's not isolating and waiting for the grill to stabilize. If that would be the case, it could take 15 minutes before each product, if you change products per se. So that's why we're not doing that. The all recipes, any recipe that's programmed into the UI is under here, okay, regardless of where it's at on the menu. So it's just all the recipes. This is also where you create and edit and modify recipes. Settings, okay, settings is where we're going to go in, we're going to do our calibrations, we're going to check our grill, we're going to set it up for the factory settings to make sure that we have the install date, the store number, the serial number correct. Okay, notice that there's lock icons on here. They're password protected. That password is not to be shared with anyone, and I repeat, anyone outside of your factory authorized service network, unless of course they are a sub-agent, okay, of your factory authorized service network. We will not share the password with anyone either, okay? This is a mandate from Wendy's corporate. Again, they don't want the store to be able to have the option to change the chicken lane or set the grill up the way they want to. Okay, that particular owner. So we can't even share it with the owner or any in-house maintenance technicians that they should have. And again, that's currently at this present moment in time. Diagnostics is where you're going to use this for troubleshooting. Okay. Also, you're going to turn around and see what's going on. You're going to update component life tracking under diagnostics. This way, if you replace a component, you got to go and update it. So we know what's going on. I'll talk about that when we get into the diagnostics portion of it. Okay. So diagnostics is very important as a technician, especially for the diagnostics log when we get into that. And I'll talk about that when we get there. So that's your home screen or your off screen. And again, I'm narrating this instead of just letting it play out. Okay, so more, this is the one I just went over, I'm pretty sure. Let me just advance that a little bit. And I think it's just going to go through each individual button, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, that's what it's doing. All right, so we don't need to watch this particular video. All right, so let's go ahead and go into programming the menu and programming. Again, I'm going to turn the volume off because I'm going to narrate it as we go. So again, we're going to turn around program menu and we're going to turn around program recipes. So first thing we want to do, so I'm going to pause it, is we got to hit all the recipes and we got to enter in our password. That password is the same as on all next generation clamshell grills. That's serve GCR. Basically, it stands for Service Garland Commercial Range. That's SERVGCR. And then hit return, and you should go into the password. Never change the passwords. Again, we are going to turn around and help any technician that's a FAS, whether they're trained or not, when they go out on the grill. The best of possibility. Okay, so we need to make sure that the password doesn't change. So once you hit the password and enter in, and hit the return, you're going to see all the recipes on that UI. This UI is basically set up for the Wendy's unit. So you're going to see all the recipes. Now, I took this video back in March 11th of this year. So we were just getting this stuff out there at the point, and we don't have the faster PMs menus, which would be faster 2 ounce, faster 4 ounce, and faster chicken. Okay, so we are going to use the faster ones when we're out there in the field if we have to edit or change or whatever the case may be. If you're from Canada, the chicken recipe has changed, and that's going to be part of your startup, is to check that chicken recipe and add time to it as per se. And I'll show you that in a little bit. But here we want to create a recipe. In the next generation platform of grills, whether you're, again, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Wendy's, Cracker Barrel, Checkers, or the mom and pop down the road that has one of these grills, this is how you're going to create a recipe. Click on the Create New. Okay, once you click on Create New, it goes Create New Recipe. So you're going to enter in your recipe name. So we're going to simply call it Test 1 for the recipe name. So I'll type in Test 1 and hit Return. Then the next thing you have to do is you got to select an image. Okay, you can scroll up and down to find pre-programmed images, or you may import a JPEG from a USB stick for an image. So if you're going to import it, you have the USB stick. I would use a blank USB stick and put the image on that. This way the UI does not have to look for 100 files to find all the pictures. You're just going to turn around and do the one on the USB stick at a time. Put that in USB port, hit import, and select the appropriate picture. And it will come in and it will size it accordingly for the icon. Okay. For this purposes, I am not going to import a image. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to use what's available. So I'm going to call this a image 0. And I'm going to select the green check mark to save it. So now at this point, again, back in March, we had only one cooking methodology programmed in the UI. Now there are 2 more options. Standard is your standard clamshell operation. Okay. Flat, of course, is your flat, no clamshell. And your AC grill or active compression is going to be used for Wendy. So you simply select active compression. This way it knows that it has to turn around and do something when it's searching for the gap of that recipe. Okay, so we're going to turn around and we're going to do active compression. Press the green check mark, and it's going to advance to the next. At this point, you have your test, your recipe name, and you have to do your cook time. You have to enter in the gap. Now keep in mind the gap is in mils, which means if you want to give it a relationship, 1,000 mils is equivalent to 1 inch. You have to turn around and select it. Is it flat or clamshell? If it's no, it means it's clamshell. Prompt selection. What do you want it to say after the cooking cycle is complete? So let's go ahead and watch. Again, you press this, enter in the cook time. Okay, you're going to press your gap. And keep in mind, when you're looking at this, you have 1 out of 1. That means it's only one stage of cooking so far. My gap, I'm going to enter in my gap. So I'm going to do a 1/2 inch thickness. I'm entering 500 mils. Hit the green check mark. Flat cooking, yes or no. Okay. Prompt selection, I want none. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll through and find none. There's none. Then I'm going to turn around, and now I have to check my temperatures for upper platen and grill plate. Right now they're off for this menu because we didn't program it in. Remember, this menu, whatever your recipe is going to be for the upper platen and the grill plate temperature, that's what the menu should be. And every recipe underneath this menu should be the same upper platen and grill plate temperatures. You can go with a minimum of 149 degrees Fahrenheit to a maximum of 450. I'm going to recommend staying 425 and below, even though it's you can do it. Just say 425 and below for the platen. And then for the grill plate, 400 would be good. So again, we're just going to simply click on that and highlight the button, and you'll see a keypad pop up. And you enter in the time. Again, because this is just creating a menu for training purposes, I just put 150. Now, let me back up there 1 second. And a little bit further. There we go. Now that all my cooking recipe is installed, with the exception, this is stage 1. So stage 1 might be 20 seconds. So I might have to add another stage. So at that point, you can do it 2 different ways. I personally like to turn around, hit the green check mark, and let it go back to the previous screen. This way it checks it and it's good. So in other words, let me show you what it does. Hit play. I'm going to hit the green check mark. Hit saved. Oops. Okay, hit saved. And now it comes back to the all recipes. So this is what I do first. It adds a couple seconds to my time frame, not a big deal. And now I see my test recipe I just created was 0. Now, if I wanted to add a stage 2 or stage 3 or 4, I can simply turn around and highlight it. As you can see right now, the 2 ounces highlighted. So I'm going to simply push on that, push on the 0. Go ahead, push on. There we go. And now my 0 or my new recipe is good. So at that point, now I can do 2 things. I can edit it or I can delete it. So at this point, I'm going to edit it. So I'll hit the pencil. And again, you can avoid going through this complete process. But again, I like doing it because I can turn around and verify everything is I was set correctly. So my recipe name, yep, that hasn't changed since when I just did it. So I'm going to hit return. Okay. If I had to turn around and change it because I misspelled it and I didn't realize it, hit the back arrow. Okay, the X back, and change it to what you need it to be, and then hit return. Okay, and of course you're going to turn around and hit return, and now you have to select the image. It's going to already give you the highlighted one that's there already. If you're not changing it, simply hit your green check mark. It's going to ask you your cooking methodology. You're not changing it. And then you go into your recipes here. As you can see, there's just, nothing's changed. Everything's still there. So over here, 1 out of 1, we want to add stage 2. Hit the right arrow. It says add a step. Hit the green check mark, and now you can add stage 2. Okay, now it gives you the previous settings that you had for stage 1, and now you just got to turn around and change the time, the gap if there's a different gap, and prompt selection if there is a different. And you're going to do that for everyone. Again, we're changing the gap here, and default is done if you wanted to put that in there, or you have none at all. And of course, the platen and the grill temperature should not have changed for stage 1 out of stage 2, or stage 2 out of 2. Once you have that all done, you hit the green check mark. And at that point, it saved it. Now under your test recipe, test 1 recipe, I now have 2 stages. If I wanted to delete that recipe, let's go back to here, press the left arrow to delete a stage. So let's see, I have 2 out of 2. Let's press the left arrow, and then I can turn around and delete it at that point. So that's how you create a recipe. Notice here, you have 4 icons going across here, and you'll have 4 more icons down here. So when the customer hits the press and go, they'll have the up and down arrow. They'll have the 8 icons showing. They will not have this button over here. But, and I'm saying this for the simple reason, let's say McDonald's, they love their limited time offers, and particularly the McRibs. So again, in the McDonald's world, every second counts. So they don't want the user to push the up and down arrows to find McRibs. What they're going to ask us to do, or they'll do it themselves now, they just turn around and highlight. I'll show you here. Let me go ahead and hit play. They're going to move that McRib up here to one of the first 8. Okay, and how they're going to do that is by turning around and doing it in menus. So in the menus, again, your password, serve GCR, and when you get into menus, you're going to see your menus available. During startup, this is where you're going to go into the UI and select the appropriate menu for the appropriate lane. Again, you have PM, faster chicken left, faster chicken right, depending on where that staging lane grill is in relationship of the clamshell grill. If this UI that I'm looking at right now is on my right zone and my staging lane grill is to the right of my clamshell grill, this would be correct. The faster PM will be on and the faster chicken will be off. Okay. If it was on the staging lane grill was on the right hand side and this was my left lane, I would have to change it. I would have to turn off the PM and turn on the chicken. Okay, so you're going to check those lanes, make sure that everything's there. On the patty lanes, the beef patties, you're only going to have the PM showing. Even the middle lane you have to check to make sure that you only have the PM menu available for the customer to see. Now, again, we're talking about how to create a menu because we have a different cook temperatures, okay, in the recipe. So we have to turn around and create a new menu. So hit the plus sign or create new, and at that point, it's going to turn around and let me advance this a little bit. And we're going to turn around, create new, hit the create button. So again, first thing we go, create recipe name, put the recipe name in. I'm just going to call it test menu. Select image, because we've already selected the 0. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to do E. I went back too far, hang on. Let it catch up here. There you go. Create new menu. I'm going to call it test, hit return. Now, here's where we're going to turn around your menu preheat settings. Your preheat settings should be the same heating temperatures of all the recipes under that menu. So again, we know that that test 1 recipe has a 150-degree setting for top and bottom. So I'm simply going to turn around and click on the off. Keypad pops up, and I'm going to enter in 150. Hit the green check mark, and on the grill plate, I'm going to do the same thing. Notice down on the left-hand corner or the right-hand corner that triangle, yellow triangle. I typed in 1, I typed in 5, and then it goes away. So if it's below the minimum and above the maximum, it'll give you your that explanation point inside that triangle. Again, we have to select the image. Now that we turned around and did our preheat setting, named it. So again, we're going to use the E because I want it different. Again, we can always import a new image even on this for the menu. Hit the green check mark. Now we have to turn around and select the recipes. So at this point here, under the menus, it's looking at the all recipe list. Any recipe that's in this UI it's looking at. What you have to do to add that recipe to this menu, and again, you need to know what the temperatures are for each recipe. You're simply going to turn around and highlight it as shown here, and then hit the green check mark. And at that point, it goes to the list of recipes underneath the test menu. Right now, I only have 1 recipe there. But again, in the McDonald's world, like I was saying earlier, if you have 16 recipes in a PM and you have a limited time offer and you're not seeing the McRibs in the first 8, because again, it only shows the first 8 icons or first 8 recipes when you go into press and go, then menu selection, and then you'll see the first 8 recipes under that menu. You're simply going to push the up and down arrow to highlight the appropriate recipe. And then you're going to use the up or down arrows here to move it up or down the list. Once you have it in the correct location you want it in, you hit the green check mark. And at that point, now when the customer goes into press and go and they select the appropriate menu, they will see the appropriate recipes within the first 8 slots. Okay, once you're done, hit that green check mark. And at that point, you go back, and again, you see here now all my menus are off. So if they go press and go, they're not going to see any menus to select from. Okay, so that means the grill's not going to heat up either because there's no preheat set temperatures because there's nothing set there. So you got to make sure you select and turn on and turn off the appropriate menu for the appropriate lane. Okay. And that takes care of that. So I'm not going to continue with it. It just goes on and talk about other things. So that takes care of menu and recipe programming. That's the same on any next generation platform grill. This is the only place you'll find that video is underneath the protected version of this. Okay. Video 4, diagnostic overview. Again, this is important when you're doing troubleshooting. You're going to have to make sure you use this during your troubleshooting when you're doing a service call. Go ahead and I'll mute that. So we've done over let's see here. Back up a little bit. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go into all recipes. Let's go into diagnostics. And when you go into diagnostics, is the very first thing you're going to see. You'll see revisions. You'll see diagnostics log, status, statistics, platinum calibrations, and a few more that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Again, revisions just gives you the overview of what's going on inside. So let's see what that is. So you have your manufacturing date, you have your install date, as long as somebody programmed it in there. You can't change anything under the revisions. Okay, it's just giving you information. Serial number, you're going to check the serial number. Is it correct? Yes or no? Okay. If it's not, you have to change it. Again, just all the different kinds of things going on inside here under revisions. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and we'll go back and we'll hit diagnostics log. All right, diagnostics log. Again, this is what we're going to use to diagnose this equipment. Remember when I said the SRTs, and I can turn around and show you how to diagnose a solid-state relay board within 15 minutes. You're going to have to use the diagnostics log to help that out. In E42, okay, if you see an E42 like here, for example, before I get into the errors, let me go ahead. There are 6 columns. The columns are up and down. Okay, you always have the 0. That's your most current error. And then as the numbers increase, it gets further away from the most current. So 0 is your most current. So that's your first column. Your second column is your date stamp. Okay. The number below it, I'm not concerned with. It has nothing to do with what I can look up. Okay. So we're only worried about the date stamp. Column 3 is your timestamp in military time, and it is your error code or alarm code underneath of that. Column 4 kind of dictates to what system you're going to look into. So an E30, okay, is in system 1. Okay, I don't know what E30 is off the top of my head. I would have to look at the chart. Okay, so I know it's in my system 1, which is your main power. Okay, column number 5 and 6 is used by engineering. To me, this has no bearing on what we're going to use as far as troubleshooting. Okay, however, it's there, and we may ask you what those numbers are during a service call or some guidance by us at the call center. Hang on 1 second. All right, so at that point, that's what those columns mean. So an E42 or an alarm 42 simply means power calibration is needed. Okay, the UI does not see the appropriate voltage coming into the system. All right, so again, system 1 is the main system. E42, you might want to write it down. E42 is a power calibration. Okay, and I'm only going to go over the top 4 or 5 error codes that we get on these grills. So an E42 is a power calibration. Okay, E1, if you look at this, that's a motion. That's usually in the movement up and down. Okay. If I were to advance this, hit play. So we can get down. Okay, I'll stop it here for a second. E11, there are temp-related issues. Okay, E10, temp, E12. Okay, these are all temp-related issues. Oops, went too far. All right, there we go. So here we see an E41. Okay, an E41 is an insufficient power supply. Okay, 3-phase power supply. Okay, the letter after the E41 is a designator of what phase is insufficient of the 3-phase power supply. So if you have an E41A error code coming in and it happens to be on your dispatch paperwork, first thing you're going to do is going into diagnostic log when you get on site. You're going to scroll down and you're going to find the most current E41. And you're going to look to see if A, B, and C for each phase is in row with all the same date and timestamp like you're seeing here. Okay. If that's the case, you're going to follow the path of contactor not being engaged or the three-phase power not moving through the contactor. Okay, remember, if there's no hood interlock system, you're not going to have to worry about that three-phase power not being present because there's something present. Otherwise, you're not going to get your screen to light up. Okay, or you'll get or even get your LED to turn on. So something's present. Now, if it's on the right lane on the 3 Platinum grill, because that has its own power supply and the grill power supply comes off the left lane input, the right lane will have a screen that's working, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has the three-phase power coming into the load contactor like it needs to be. So if it's on the right lane, check your plug, check your outlet. Okay, make sure you have three-phase power coming out of your outlet. If you don't, then that's your problem. That's why you have all 3 phases, A, B, and C, all same time stamped and date stamped as you see here. But let's say you on the right or the middle or the left lane, and you have a 41A, B, and C. Through that, and I'll show you in the wire diagram, through the grill contactor or the control contactor, it goes through the power switch, engages that contactor, and it goes to a jumper, basically sending power to each lane. Okay, one leg of power goes to the AC to DC power conversion board. The other leg of power goes up through my safety thermostats for each heating zone of that lane and back down to energize the coil of the load contactor, sending the 3-phase power down to the solid state relay board. That solid state relay board communicates to the SIB that we have the appropriate voltage, and it communicates it up to the UI so you can do a visual that you're seeing here. So if I have a 41A, B, and C, I'm checking, first of all, power. Okay, just use that as a rule. Checking incoming power to my contactor. Do I have all 3 phases? Checking the output power of my contactor. Do I have all 3 phases? If the answer is no, I have nothing, okay, on the output side of my contactor, then we're going to turn around and check one of those safety thermostat discs that are in the platen or the grill surface. Again, there's 5. One of them has opened up and it's not allowing the voltage to come back down to the coil of the contactor to close the contactor. Could it be a bad contactor? Sure can. But again, you just turn around and troubleshoot what was going on. Now your solid state relay board is what controls the heat to that particular each heating zone of that lane. So if my solid state relay board has one of the triacs stuck closed, it's going to send power to that heating zone continuously, and it's going to turn around, eventually hit 500 degrees to open up the safety thermostat to drop out all 3 phase powers. So again, that's what we're looking at. For 41A, B, and C, it's going to be one of those scenarios. Bad contactor, not the right voltage coming into the unit, or no 3-phase power, actually I should say. And or one of your safety thermostats for each of your heating zones has opened up for that lane. So A, B, and C, you're going to go to those 2 directions. Now, if you have a single A, for example, 41A, you're simply going to turn around and check the incoming voltage to that load contactor for the lane from A to B. And I'll show you this in a diagram. And at that point there, it's going to be the black to the red wires. And if I have it going input of the contactor, I'm going to check the output. If I don't have it, at that point, I'm going to turn around and say, wait, why do I not have it? Check the other phases as well, which they should be fine. But that's going to turn around and indicate that phase A or phase 1 or phase X, if you're using X, Y, and Z, is bad in the contactor, something going on inside that contactor. Replace the contactor. Okay. If it's a single A and you have the voltages coming into the contactor and out of the contactor as you should, you're going to check your connections, and you're also going to go down to your solid state relay board to check the wiring there as well. Check again, the black and the red are for the phases, phase 1, phase 2. You check across that. Whatever you had on the output, you should have on the input of the solid state relay board. So you're going to check your connections. If you find that one of those wires do not have the correct voltage, then that wire is compromised. Is it connected correctly to the contactor, or is there a break in the wire going up to the solid state relay board? But if that checks out okay, then you got two things you have to check at that point. You have the ribbon cable, the communication between your solid state relay board and your SSRB. Just simply swap that to another lane, see if the problem follows. If the problem still stayed in the lane that you had the 41A in, then look at your solid state relay board. Okay, that could be the problem. One of the transformers has taken the input AC voltage down to low voltage to go through the communication cable up to your SIB is probably going to be the problem. Okay, so it gives you that heads up. Now, well, I just turned around and described that, yeah, chances are if you have a 41A, B, or C, it can be, end result, it could be the solid state relay board. So why do I go through all those troubleshooting steps? Why don't I just change the solid state relay board? For the simple reason, you do not want to turn around and diagnose the equipment wrong and say, yep, Mr. Customer, you need a solid state relay board. I don't have one. I have to order it. You go back to your shop or you do it from your phone, whatever, and you find out they're back ordered for 2 weeks. So you finally get this solid state relay board, you go back and you install it, and all of a sudden you have the same problem again. So not only did you have the customers upset with you or whoever because there was a 2-week lead time on those parts, now you're returning and you still have the same problem. Well, now you have to go through all these checks again when you should have done it first place. Okay, just keeping that in mind. This is why I go through those troubleshooting steps, especially for the E41A, B, and C. Does not always have to be the solid state relay board for that particular error code. However, a 41A, B, and C is insufficient 3-phase power. The other two error codes that you may come across is an E63 or an E64. Okay, those two error codes means platen calibration is needed or gap calibration, depending how you want to word it. Okay, so we'll keep going. Now, diagnostic status gives you your status. Okay, you have your customer, you have your grill type. Okay, we're going to go scroll down. You have your input, again, power AC line frequency. Oops. It'll auto select the frequency coming out of the wall and your input power. It's going to tell you what the input power is. Okay, A, B, and C. Again, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or X, Y, and Z. And this is what I have, 213.3 volts coming in, or 214. It tells you what's going on. So you can always look here too as well. Okay, do I have voltage here? Okay, what's going on? Do I have voltage indication on my SIB when we get into component identification on LED number 5? Is it flashing? Does that tell me that I have the 3-phase power present? All right. And then you're going to keep going, scrolling down, and you're going to see SIB supply input voltage. All right, so that's your 24-volt feed from your AC to DC power conversion board. All right, you want to be between 23.5 to 24.5 volts. Ideally, 24 volts is what you really should be seeing. But between 23.5 and 24.5, you're okay. You don't have to make any changes. You don't have to adjust that AC to DC conversion board. Okay, scroll down. you're going to have your 12-volt rail, your 5-volt rail, and your 3.3-volt rail. It's telling you what the voltages are for each one of those. And I'll show you that when we get into the SIB identification, the component identification on those rails. Again, they are for other components, like your power to your UI, your user interface. Okay, power sync roll. All right, this is very important when you have two lanes hooked to the same power cord. Okay, you have a master and you have a slave. Essentially, all that does is it syncs the two units, so you have a properly balanced load on the electricity. Okay, that's all it's doing, and it's based off of the one as being the master and the other one just following suit out of that of how that works. I'll show you that in the diagrams when I get to it. And the group cycle count. Okay, you have 24 available cycles. We only use 15 cycles of the 24. So during your power calibration, we get up at 1 or down at 1, etc. I'll show you that too as well when we get the calibrations. Okay, and then other information that's under here. There's a lot of stuff that's in here that tells you other stuff, but we don't need to go through all that in the training. None of that is really going to help us out there in the field. So, but if you want to look at it, take a look at the video and you can see everything that's under there. And we're going to go ahead and advance. Okay. All right. I'm going to go back. And again, we've talked about diagnostic log status. We're going to go into statistics now. Statistics is also a good spot for troubleshooting. Okay. It's going to give you total cook cycles. Again, this is my training unit, so there's not that much cook cycles on here. It's going to give you a cook cycle since the last cleaning. Last time I put this into cleaning was a while ago. All right. So total services. So every time you do the data life update tracking, okay, it's going to turn around and count that as a service call. Okay. If you just change a component and you don't update the data life tracking, it's not going to count it as a service call. Okay. All right. Hit play. It's going to give you your hours used. So again, once it's started up at the factory, it starts calculating how many hours it's been on. So right now, again, my training grill, I have 265 completed cook cycles. I have 524 hours of total use, and I have 85 partially cooked cycles or canceled cook cycles. If I were to add them, I should come up with 416 total cook cycles, which it does. So now that we know we have 524 hours and 416 total platinum cycles, I can use that when I get into the advanced portion of diagnostics to say what's going on. So let's go ahead and hit play. Advance. Get last service call. Again, timestamps it. So now we'll go down to platinum calibration statistics. Platinum calibration statistics, we may have you go in, we may not have you go in. This is more used for the product recognition grills. Okay, used in Chick-fil-A and McDonald's. Okay, your Wendy's grill does not have product recognition, nor does the general market express grill does not have product recognition. So we're going to bypass that and we'll get right to where we need to. Again, if you want to look at it for McDonald's purposes, etc., you can. So again, back up a little bit. Okay, so once we go down platinum calibration, then we go to statistics. Then you have sound test, hit start. This is where you can change your volume. And now you have, and then language character map down here is where you're going to change your character map appropriately for that particular language. Again, only what's pre-programmed in the UI is what you'll have. So we're going to go skip right on over to advanced. Scroll down. And we're going to go ahead and hit advanced. When you go into advanced, it's going to say, please log in to continue. Guess what? That password is the same password you use for everything else. Serve GCR. Once you're inside the advanced diagnostics, you'll have three options. You'll have motion diagnostics and temperature diagnostics. If you should click on either one of these two, make sure you have 15 minutes for it to complete. You may cancel it during the process, but it won't do a complete diagnostics of the motion of up and down of the platen, or it will not do a complete diagnostics of each heating zone. What's important in this particular mode is the component life tracking. You're going to simply press start. I'll advance it a little bit. Okay, and then you're going to see your component life tracking and then all the critical components that we have to turn around and track. Okay, you have details and reset. So before you just hit reset, some of the stuff that you might have to turn around is record the information before you reset it. So for example, you saw here, we clicked on the power supply, 24 volt. That's your AC to DC power supply. You can see here that it was 524 hours of use on it so far because it counts as the same time as the grill being in use. So at this point, I can safely assume, again, assumption is a powerful word, safely assume that this AC to DC power conversion board was not changed out. But I still have the same amount of hours used as the whole grill. So at this point, I'm going to turn it around, change it out because I know it was bad. And when I'm done, I'll hit the reset button. Perfect. All right. Counter starts back up again. However, let's say I was out in a service call and I go into update my tracking, or I want to confirm to make sure that it wasn't changed before to make sure I'm not missing something. I'll go into advanced, take a look at it. It's like, oh crap, somebody just replaced that yesterday because I only have 10 hours of use on it. So my troubleshooting procedure was wrong, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to go back and make sure that I double check my diagnostics because again, somebody replaced it the day before or 10 hours ago, and I'm a different technician that replaced it. Or even if I was the same technician, I don't want to turn around and replace it again and still have the same problem reoccur. So again, this is one of the reasons why you want to make sure you're using your data, your life component life tracking updating has been done and completed, so we can turn around and use it because it raises those questions. If you're the same technician returning, well, God, maybe I didn't diagnose this correctly. What's going on? Or the technician before you didn't diagnose this correctly. All right. So keep that in mind. Now, here's the thing you got to watch out for, guys. As you're diagnosing these units and a technician was there before and you're not aware of it, especially if you're after hour call, don't throw your own technician under the bus that works for the same company. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you're not bad mouthing another company. Just fix it. Don't say nothing about it, and just say, yeah. Don't say, God, that stupid technician before me doesn't know what he's doing. That company is unbelievable. Well, guess what? You could be talking about your own company, and you just put your foot right in your mouth. So make sure you don't say stuff like that there. All right. Just turn around and do your job. Make sure you're checking the diagnostic procedures of each component correctly and you're updating the data life tracking. Okay. Very important. Now, if you're going to go ahead and look at if you had a bulletin back, if you're not receiving service bulletins from your service managers, guys, make sure you get a hold of your service manager and say, hey, where are my service bulletins? We send out several bulletins going on throughout the year, depending on what the nature of the bulletin might be. For an example, the actuator motors. Okay, we have a bulletin out there. If you have an actuator that needs to be replaced within a 90-day period from install of the actuator or the grill, you have to turn around and send that actuator motor to the vendor directly. All right, you have to turn around, you have to get the information from here. Okay, the component life tracking. For example, if I were to go ahead and, okay, let's go ahead and go back up to the actuator motor. Okay, there's actuator assembly, hit details, and you're going to simply write down the current platen cycles. So again, we know by looking at our statistics that we had 416 completed cycles, or partial cycles and completed cycles, okay, of cooking and partial cooking. And at that point, I'm going to say, yeah, well, that platen was not replaced at all, okay? Or that actuator, I should say, was not replaced. So I'm going to go ahead and replace it because that's what I diagnosed it as, being a bad actuator. So I replace it and I'll hit reset and I'm good to go. It's not going to give you your time as far as how long that's been out there and installed. It'll give you your complete cycles. So again, I have 524 hours of use. All right, so if I'm looking at that there, I'm looking roughly about maybe 85 days of use, okay, of 526 hours of use. So 85 days, if I were to take that into here, wow, you're looking at maybe, I don't know, one every hour and 10 minutes of a cook cycle. All right, so that tells me that this is not a very busy store at all. Okay, which again, it's not because it's my test unit. So that's how you determine what's going on. You got to do a little bit of math, and it can be a ballpark figure. So again, if you replace it and your company replaced the actuator motor, you'll have a record of it anyway. All right, hit reset on that, and then you're good to go. And then we're going to go ahead and get into your motion, or back up here. Okay, motion diagnostics. It's just going to move up and down to your between your home switch and lower home switch, and you see a progression bar advancing. It takes about 15 minutes. You can also cancel the motion diagnostics at any time, which I'm going to do here. And if in the video I do it, okay. So again, starting at temperature diagnostics, click on that, and you're going to turn around. You'll see your current temperatures. You'll see your heater set points, what each lane is set for the temperature. The max start temp, okay? Your temperature, your current temperature needs to be below 212 degrees in order for the temperature diagnostics to start. So again, 66, 67, 65 is all below 212. If I had 214, it's not going to start the temperature until it gets below 212, all 5 zones. Once it's under below 212, it'll start to heat back up again. And at that point there, again, we got to make sure that you're doing this from the off mode. If it's a heater set point and you're in preheat, it's going to heat to that point. Timer start temp, okay, starts at 248 degrees Fahrenheit. So that starts the timestamp over here, and stop time is at 356 Fahrenheit. It gives you your elapsed time in seconds. There is a point of in here, if it reaches 7 minutes, I believe, or 526 seconds, I believe it is, okay, of time of not raising 5 degrees of temperature in that time frame, it's going to give you an error and it will come up as a failed test. Okay. So I'm just going to cancel the test and go back. We're not going to do it again. That takes 15 minutes for that to happen for each one, roughly. It might take a little bit longer if you have your power is questionable and it's not indicated by an error. All right, and again, the language map that we have down here just goes down to selected keypads. So now you're back out here, you go to the home and you're good to go. Now all we have to worry about now is the settings button. So first thing we got to look at is what is under the factory portion of the settings button that we have to be concerned about. And that's going to be checking the install date. in start update. It's going to be turning around and checking serial numbers.
Go into the settings. Not to be shared.
And I'm going to pause it. So once you're in here, password, don't worry about changing passwords. You can, but don't. Okay, keep them all the same. All right, so we're not going to change that. I'll bypass that. Time, we can turn around and check our time, hit start. And again, we have your AM, PM, and the military time. Keep it in the military time. If you want to see what the military time is, simply click on it. It tells you. Okay, just keep it in military time. Date, you're going to check your date. Again, our date it will be representative to the date that's currently already programmed in there because of the factory initializing this UI. Okay, so it should be able to see that date. If it's different, just simply click on the date. Now this is March 11th of 2021. That's when I was there doing this video. That is correct, so I didn't have to change it. So I can hit the check mark to save it, or just the back arrow. Go back to the back arrow, factory settings. This is where you're going to turn around and check your factory settings. Okay, you're going to put your install date. You're going to turn around and hit your serial number. Make sure it's the correct one. You're going to put in the store ID, okay, number. Okay, the reason for that, okay, is this: when this is communicating back and forth through the internet, it goes to a server. It's going to look at the store ID and the serial number, and it should match. So it communicates back and forth. When we get into the master slave function, I'll show you how it knows what lane that it's communicating with. All right. And we'll just scroll down and see what else is under here. Okay, install date, simply click on it. Well, if you ever have to change a UI out, make sure you go back into factory settings and put in the correct information. All right, don't assume that it's going to do it automatically. You have to enter it in. So you're going to have to enter your manufacturing date in. If you don't know it because you replaced the UI, look at the UI to the left or the right of it. It'll give you your manufacturing date. If you don't know the install date, look at the UI to the left or the right of it. All right. If the data tag is completely missing, look at the UI to the right or left for the serial number. And of course, the store number. Yeah, I have a question. Let's see. I know you didn't have a. So Ryan, you have a question. I know you didn't have a mic, so go ahead and put it in the chat for me. Yes, it's true. It's a lot of information, Ryan. That's why the videos are online, so you can get access to them. There is a ton of info, especially if you have not seen these girls before. All right. So again, we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to advance down through here. Store ID, you put that in there. Saved. And then again, this is just an example. You don't put the W inside of it. go down and you go on factory settings. Now you go back to settings, and now you have the import export from the USB and reset the factory defaults. So let's go ahead and click on import export. And at that point, you're going to see three options. Import recipes from a USB. Export recipes to a USB. So let's say you replace that UI and you have to get the recipes from another lane. So you just simply go to the lane that's working, export the recipes on the USB, and then move it over to the new UI to import those recipes. Saves a lot of time. If we want you to get the error logs, where you can download them onto a USB stick and then email them, we're going to have to go through the export system logs. Okay, that will not only download the error codes, it will down other logs as well that engineering may need or may not need. But the important way of doing it is getting your error logs downloaded through the export system logs. So I'm not going to go through all that. Again, once you start it, you have to complete it. When it's done, I'll go back to here. Export system logs. All right, reset the factory defaults. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, if you reset it back to factory defaults, it's just like putting a brand new UI into the unit. Not only do you have to check the factory settings and put all the right date and the serial number and information back in it, you're going to also have to do all the calibrations again. Okay. So it stores that information. So just like if you reset factory defaults, you're starting from the beginning. Resets everything. Okay. Including calibrations, recipes, everything. So I only use the factory default option if everything else fails and I have no other option but to do that. Right, so keep that in mind. That is my last resort. Okay. I don't want to use that unless I absolutely have to, because I know once I push that button to say yes, it's going to come back on. I'm going to have the appropriate software for the UI, because again, it doesn't save software. It goes back to whatever it was before it was out there. So if that UI was installed 2 years ago and we had 7 updates of software, and depending on, that's just an exaggeration, depending on the process of that updating software, you may need to update version 5, then go to version 7 or whatever. So it's going to take you some time just to get to where you can go in and update all the other information. So that's why I don't like using that unless I absolutely have to. And again, that takes us down to software update. Make sure you have the software on a USB stick, hit start, and it'll go through the software update. You have to acknowledge it. So at that point, I don't think there's anything else. Again, start update, and once you're done, you're good. All right, so and then next segment of pages, or again, I call these chapters. Next segment would be calibrations. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. So that takes care of the first 5 basic videos of the UI overview. All right, very important to know that those informations. One of the main things is the menus and recipes, turning on and turning off for the user, depending on the way the grill's set up, and if you have to replace a UI or put a new UI in, etc., you have to go through factory settings. Also, new grill, you're checking factory settings, install date, timestamp, okay, serial number, and store ID. It's all on the startup checklist. All right, I don't know if anybody here is from our Canadian market. I didn't look at where everybody was from. But if you are from Canada, please take a picture of this screen. Okay. For some reason in Canada, you must grow bigger chickens. We had to increase the time of the faster chicken. So we had to add 50 seconds to the cook time. The above temperature right here is the actual recipe for the PM faster chicken for basically it was the globe, the world, with the exception Canada had to change the recipe. They added 20 seconds to the stage 1, and they added whatever that is here. Let's see, 20, 305. Then they added 25 seconds to the stage 3. Total of 50 seconds, which that doesn't make sense, but yeah. Whatever the case may be, it's they added the time. So make sure you take pictures of that. The platinum temperature for Wendy's, 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Grill temperature is 300. All right, active compression components. All right, let's see where we're at here. And we're almost ready for a break. And we're actually just about on time. We're just going to be about 5-6 minutes over. So let's go ahead and take a look at this video. And again, I'm going to bypass the introductions.
Some components will change or may look different in this video.
Okay, this is your island or your against no wall behind the unit install. You can see here my sandwich prep station's over here. So that means my staging lane grill's here and my active compression grill is to the left of my staging lane grill. And then here's against the wall. We've seen that several times already.
When using a floor jack to adjust the casters, please be careful of the solid state initial setup of your clamshell. However, please keep
some of this stuff I'm going to bypass because this video is for a standalone video if you're not in the training. So I don't need to show every single piece of it. During your installation, when you go out there, in an accessory box that comes with the staging lane grill are floor plates. We as technicians are not installing these floor plates. We're not drilling into the floor. They're there to act as an extra wheel chock. All right. What you're going to do when you do the install, you're going to take the grills off the truck. By the time you get them off your truck or trailer, especially if you're doing it in an overnight install, the demolition crew will be done by the time you're supposed to be there at, let's say, 10 o'clock, for example. And at that point, you're going to wheel these suckers right into place in the right location, pending the sandwich station, and it depends on which grill goes where. You're going to hand the installation plates to somebody to install, and once they mark the floor, you move the grills out of the way. At that point, go ahead and raise the grills up to as close as possible to 36 inches from the cooking surface to the floor. When they're done with your installation of those floor plates, you should be just about done or done with your adjustments of your casters, the height adjustments. At the same time frame, the electrician should be just about done running the new lines or connecting the new lines, depending on what he had to do for the store. Once you're done with that, basically the install is completed at that point, because you've already have everything else completed on the grill, the standoffs, etc. And you're going to go ahead and check your power supply and go from there and do your startup. Again, that's the process of installation. Needless to say, guys, if you're doing an overnight install, if you're scheduled to be there for 10 p.m., I would try to be there for 9:30 p.m. That gives you a little bit of time to get the grills off the truck and into the store. Because as soon as the store can give the old equipment out of the way by the demolition crew, they're going to take it out. Okay. So let's say you don't show up that night because whatever reason, trailer gets a flat, whatever. You do not call somebody, okay, to allow them to, especially the store, to say, hey, I'm not going to make it because of X, Y, Z, whatever the case may be. They can stop the demolition crew from ripping out the old equipment. Because if you rip out the old equipment and you don't arrive to install the new equipment, that store cannot open the next day. So communication is key on that part of it. Now, a brand new store, you have a little bit of leadway, but you still want to be there when you're supposed to be there. Because again, you have other people that are scheduled to come in and do trainings, etc., on that piece of equipment.
Okay, the calibration procedures of this grill
All right,
is
so
the same that
I'm going to pause this. We're going to talk about calibrations. Again, this is a standalone video on YouTube, and it talks about calibrations and where to go on the Garland Grills YouTube channel. So I'll bypass that. Okay. And again, if you look here, you can have another segment: test, heater state test, motion test. They're the same thing as under the diagnostics area. All right, so let's go ahead and play this.
control panel is the
This is, no, sorry.
Wi-Fi board. This board is connected to all 3 SIBs. The unit will work perfectly fine without internet connection. The Wi-Fi antenna is located behind the middle UI. This is your active compression board. Currently today there are
3. We just released another one not too long ago.
2 different versions. Version 1 you're looking at now, and version 2 is here. They operate in the same manner. We split the incoming power to the actuator motor to go through this board. We will now take a look at this board in action. We will initiate a cook cycle now. We can now see the light come on the top left-hand corner. That means it has reached its point where it's going to extend your active compression pin, and it's looking for a high amp draw on that motor of about 2 amps. When it receives 2 amps, notice the LED lights have now changed and the grill is still beeping. That means the platen is still moving to its desired gap for that recipe. Once the beeping stops, the platen will be at the desired gap of that recipe. We now hear the end of the cook cycle tone. This tone is your early warning that the cook cycle is ending. You'll be followed by a sharp beep. The platen will now move up and hover above the product. Notice the bottom red LED light turns off first, and then your power to the motor, the red LED light in the top left of the motor board, turns on. Then your lower left green LED light turns off. When the top red LED light turns off and the bottom red and green LED lights turn back on, the platen should be in its fully extended up position. Inside the arm, you're going to find the active compression motor, the compression pin assembly, some wiring, and a micro switch. Let's take a moment and look at the active compression pin. You can see here you have your pin nut with the key slot to hold the nut stationary inside the back of the arm. There's a slot on each side. Then you can notice the threads, and then the solid pin housing that goes through it. Then you have a collar to activate the micro switch that's on there with a set screw so it doesn't move up and down the shaft. Here we can see the pin lock bracket that holds the nut in place that allows the shaft to move up and down through the nut. With the pin removed, you can see the bracket assembly and the micro switch assembly below it. There is a slide that will activate the micro switch. To adjust the protrusion of the pin on the outside of the back, you will simply loosen the 4 screws on the white plastic and move the assembly up or down. Please be mindful, this assembly is plastic and it is fragile. All you need to do is finger tight with the screwdriver. Now we will move our attention to the rear of the unit. Again, this clamshell grill has several different models.
Okay, just I'm going to stop this for a second. Just like you've seen that picture before with that screw coming in from the left side for the crating, you can see that this cross member has changed. This is a machine cross member. The cross member you saw before was indeed your updated portion that I'm talking about. It's a cast piece. Here's your upper home switch, and your lower home switch is right here. The two switches over here are your over travel switches. Those over travel switches, basically, if they come in contact with the arm, will turn around and shut the power off to the actuator motor. Okay, if the over travel switches are hit during movement, it will turn around and time out. After 40 seconds, if it does not reach its target, it'll give you an error 6. If an overamp situation happens on the motor, it'll give you an error 2. Okay, these red marks and yellow marks, okay, on the back of this grill or any of the next generation grills are torque values. Okay, we'll talk about torque values later on. Notice that there's now a flat edge on your upper shaft, and this is for a roller that helps with the alignment.
We have changed as a bar on the left between the bar right hand side. You have now seen the differences.
All right, so that's, again, we just wanted to go ahead and go over that. There's a little bit more involved, but I just wanted to hit you the key components for this training. All right, so let's take a look at this again. Just to recap, again, this is the original version for the first test units that were out there. You only had one micro switch, okay? And you have your pin and your motor. It's a DC motor. One way it will turn, it will extend, it will screw the shaft up through the nut and out, extend the pin. The other way it will reverse and it will retract or unscrew on the nut. If you have to adjust this because the pin is not sitting out a 1/16 of an inch to 3/16 of an inch, simply lift up the key nut lock and pull this forward a little bit and turn your nut a little and then push it back in to make sure. You don't want it even or flush with the back of your arm. There's actually 3 reasons for that. We don't want this collar coming back and hitting this member right here, breaking it, or we don't want the pin to come all the way back and overamp the motor on the retraction. So what it's doing, it's looking for your deactivation of your micro switch or switches now, because now version 2, again, there's your pin again. This is the pin that comes out. You're just going to turn your nut to get the 3/16 or 16th of an inch sticking out the back. Okay, this is version 1. Okay, one micro switch. Version 2, which is now the current, there's 2 micro switches. They're wired in unison for redundancy in case one should fail. Okay, this way we're good to go. It'll help stop that retraction motion. Okay. Also, what's different here, if you have experience with the clamshell grills on the next generation platform, you know Chick-fil-A has the platen hangers in reverse. You know that McDonald's has a motor in here to adjust the rear. And we also know Chick-fil-A has 2 adjusting bolts. Wendy's in the General Market Express Grill, you have 3 adjusting shoulder bolts. Okay, adjusting nuts. Looking at this picture right here, you see that the blue highlighted nut here is the actual nut that attaches through the cowl. That's this part here at the top of the platen and into the platen itself. Okay. That you don't want to turn around and adjust. However, before you do any type of calibration on any of these next generation platform grills, check the threads on that portion. If you are seeing threads, somebody was out there and chances are they split the cowl from the platen for whatever reason, a repair, change a component, whatever. Okay, and they did not use the blue Loctite on the threads when they tightened it back up. Be mindful when you're tightening this bottom one up into here. You do not want to go one more turn just for good luck measures. Okay, if you over crank it on the bottom part, you will snap this inside the platen, and then you're probably going to end up replacing the platen if you can't use an easy out to get that out of the platen. Either way, you don't want to, put all your strength into that, tightening that out. Okay, if you see threads showing, reverse it a little bit because somebody was in there, and put the blue Loctite on it, because that will, if you don't do that, what's going to end up happening 3 to 5 months later, you're going to be back out to recalibrate. Okay. Again, the little nut right here above that is going to be your adjuster nut, and then the nut atop, the small skinny one, that's your jam nut or your locking nut. Again, you are going to, on the Wendy's grill, you have 3 adjustable mechanical shoulder bolts that you have to do it when you're calibrating the grill. So here's another spot. This is like a wear plate, a pivot point, if you would. Okay, right here in the back of the arm. This blue pin and this red pin, they will come out. There's a bolt here and a bolt here. Okay, that you take out, and then you push the pins through. That allows you to lift this whole arm up off the rear knuckle, so you can get it out of the way to change your shaft seals and your O-rings, and also to turn around to do any repairs. For an example, add a shim because the front of this arm is deflecting down. And here's another look at the that lock pin, and you see it's a complete circle, same size of the nut, and 2 flat edges that sit down on these slots. There is an O-ring in there. That might be part of the annual certification or annual PM. As of right now, it's not. We're still looking at it. Again, here's another look at those pins that you have to remove. There's the pin that goes across, and the pin that goes. This is the guide loop pin. This is the arm pin that goes through the knuckle itself. These 2 bolts here have to come out, and then you push the pins out of the way. Make sure when you push this pin out, you save your bushings if you ever have to change just the shaft seal. Those bushings in here are very crucial. If you don't have them back in place, you will not be able to completely correctly calibrate the platen gap. So that's very important. Now looking at the back of this unit, this is a 3 platen grill. It still have the older cross members on it. They're not the newest ones. However, right here and right here is where those deci packs will be located at. As you can see here, here's where we have the nut cert right here and right here for the grease shelf. And if you take that 2x4 off and you reuse that bolt, you can see how it comes right in here and come in contact with your cross member. So make sure you use the appropriate fastening screws. All right, don't use the wrong ones. Right here is that roller mechanism that I showed you, the flat portion of the upper shaft. That roller helps with the sway, okay, from left to right of the arm. Okay, there's a question on the test with the arm moving left to right. It says platen/arm capitalized moving left to right. It's referencing the arm movement. That's going to be your bolt on top, the 9/16 inch bolt on the knuckle, and your cross member assembly right here. Something could be loose. And here's another look at this as well. This is your upper shaft housing. You have your 2 blocks, a roller, 2 spring washers, and then your bolt, and the nut in the back. If you ever have to take this upper housing out of the unit, you're simply going to replace this gasket here. Make sure you save these spacers on here. There are videos on replacing and lubricating the upper shaft on the Garland Grills YouTube channel. It's geared for McDonald's. However, it's the same process. Okay. All right, this is the most current active compression board. Okay, we've seen how it worked in the video. Okay, it just looks a little different. The operation and sequence is identical. So this black relay up here just basically interrupts the power to the actuator motor. There's an LED light just below of that is blue. That tells you when it's closed or when it's opened. So right here you can see that the relay is open, and you can see this. There's 2 amber LED lights here. You can see the first one's on. That means the power to the actuator motor has been paused or disconnected through this relay, and it's turning around and sending power to the arm to extend that motor to go against the knuckle. Once it reaches 2 amps of overamps, it's going to turn around and stop that motion, or stop the power to the arm motor. And at that point, you'll see the 2 amber lights coming on, and you'll see the blue light coming on, which means now my relay is back to normal state, and it's sending power back down to the actuator motor to continue to the recipe gap. Remember, when you set up the menu of that recipe, you're looking at active. If you're selecting cooking methodology, you're looking for active compression. If you select active compression on that menu, it's going to use the active compression board. If you set it up as standard, it's not even going to look for the active compression board. It's just going to come down to the desired gap. So here on the platen raising, after it's done cooking, it's going to come up those encoder counts. Okay, we'll talk about encoder counts in a little bit. It's going to get the correct encoder count from the SIB, and it's going to determine when it's at the right level. It's going to shut the motor off, the power to the actuator motor, and send power to my motor in the arm to retract the pin. As you can see here, it's the second LED light's now on. Once it's all come all the way back, it hits the micro switches. It's going to turn off all the LED lights, and it's going to turn on the blue light, sending power back down to the actuator to resume to the upper limit switch or home switch or the open position. Okay, so that's basically how that's going to work. And at this point now, we've reached our 20-minute break, and right now we're just a little bit over. So right now it's 1:18. I'll give an extra 2 minutes here, and we'll go to let's see, 1:20. So we'll go to 1:45 for to return. So this way we can get up, use the bathrooms, get a drink, get something to eat, whatever. I know this is a long training, but again, there's a lot of information, so we're going to go ahead and do one. Let's see, it'd be 1:20, so 20 minutes, 1:40. So 1:40, we will be back. Okay, let me. All right, so 1:40, we'll be back. And during this time frame, I am going to stop recording. No sense of recording while I'm not here. I'm going to go on mute. And so let me stop recording, and I'll start that up back up when we return.